All right, EMS says that they are having a hardship at the moment. As a whole, as South Carolina EMS works to get more people recruited for working first responders jobs in South Carolina. And they're not thinking about just today, but they're looking down the road as well, 10 years from now.
As we continue with our health stories today, dropping out of high school could increase your risk of heart disease later in life. A new study finds each additional year of schooling is linked to a 2.5% reduction in heart disease. Researchers say one explanation is that people with more education have higher incomes, which allow them to afford better food and health care. Well, here's something you may have been asked to do when you went to visit a friend. Has anyone ever invited you into their home, and upon entering the threshold, they've said to you, hey, wait, could you please take your shoes off?
Do you do that?
I would never do that to anybody who came to visit me, but that's just me. All
right, our medical reporter, Rosemarie Beltz, is here to talk about what science has to say about this tradition for some of us. So
well,
give us the deal.
Well, you don't ask your visitors, but do you take your shoes off?
We do take our shoes off, but I would never ask a visitor to take their shoes off.
I don't take my shoes off unless I'm asked to. In my house, you never know what you're going to be stepping in. No. So keep your shoes on.
So, before we get to the health,
JR has a dog, in case anybody was wondering.
Which is a valid point, by the way, because I've experienced that myself. So before we get to the health, I just thought it was kind of interesting who is taking their shoes off. 31% of Americans in a survey that I found online do take their shoes off. But what was interesting, Darcy, you can kind of relate to this, only 50% asked their guests to take their shoes off. And even more interesting, in the South, 58% of people will more than likely not ask you to take your shoes off, but up north, they'll tell you to take your shoes off.
Well, see, it's because we're very polite, and if I've asked you to come to my house and I asked you to take your shoes off, I just feel like that's insulting you and your feet.
Right, exactly, I know.
But that's just me, that's just me.
If
someone asked me to take my shoes off, I probably would, but I just wouldn't ask somebody. But I guess the bigger question is, why does it matter if we're taking our shoes off or leaving them on when we walk through our homes?
So I found this trending online today, this morning. It's not that there's brand new research out. The research goes from 2008 all the way to 2016. But for some reason it's trending again. I don't know if it's summer or why it's trending. But what they found was these researchers from various institutions in Arizona and Houston, they studied, with one of the studies, they took people with, they gave them brand new shoes for 2 weeks and then took samples of the shoes after the 2 weeks was up. They found on the outside of the shoe over 400,000 different units of bacteria of cells and 3,000 on the inside, right? So, and the really unpleasant bacteria, it's E. coli, which will associate with fecal matter, C. diff and MRSA, which you might have heard, you might hear these terms in the medical community, a lot of these bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. So, I mean, that is the concern when you're kind of, it's a little unpleasant to what they found.
Doesn't really matter, I guess.
Well, okay, that's a really good question. So what they did was, not only did they want to look at what was on the shoes, but are you tracking it in, and are we passing this along? And they found on first contact, basically when you just put your foot down, that 90% of that bacteria was kind of transmitted onto the tile. And I looked, and it was all different types of shoes. There were from, running terrain shoes to medical shoes. And a lot of reason, or the people, sneakers, clogs, people wear in the operating room, because they're always kind of looking at these types of bacteria in the OR setting. So it was kind of a different range. So, I mean, why is it important, and this sort of bacteria? But like I said,
are we going to get sick if we don't take our shoes off?
So here's the thing. A lot of us might pick up this bacteria and not get sick at all, but someone with an immune compromised system, right? Someone maybe under chemotherapy may get sick, but we live with germs all around us. And so the takeaway is, if you have a small child, the jury's still out. I checked in with a pediatrician. There's no guidelines, but you just might want to think about, and even wiping your feet, because you're wiping your feet on a mat that's also collecting germs at the Waco mat.
What if you have a small dog? just running
Well,
free.
wipe their bum.
And watch where you step.
And watch where you step.
And watch where
That's
you
it.
step.
I hear you.
Thank you, Rosemarie.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, stay with us. There is more Friends at 5. Daniel Bonds has your forecast after the break.